Hello, it's Thursday and it's Creative You podcast time. So, welcome to a knitting and crocheting podcast out of Pennsylvania. We are surely into fall. The other day I walked the dog and it was just like raining leaves as we were walking. It was almost surreal. I just loved it. It was incredible. We're still taking daily walks. So, I have a lot to show you. The thing about my dog though, he's patting me, is that he wants to go farther and farther. Now that he's feeling better, his joints are feeling better. A big long block isn't enough anymore, so you can't just fit in a quick walk before you're off to the yarn shop. Oh goodness, but I'm glad he's happy. And so this is called Blanket for Phoebe. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. It is not blocked yet, and I'll show it to you once it gets blocked because it's gonna really be pretty. And this is a yarn called Cascade BigWheel. It's a 100% acrylic bulky yarn, and it really did stripe really pretty. And you could do this same blanket for a boy and just put a different edging. But yeah, I'm really happy. I did not work in the ends because I have learned that if you work in the ends and then block it when you're stretching it, the ends can come out and it undoes your work. So we learned something there. And I think some of you knew I was working on a pumpkin. I love it. I'm so happy with my pumpkin. This is a skein of a discontinued yarn called DaVinci, and it looked like, if you watch my prior podcast, it looked like just like a cow with ribbing. I think it was 4-2 ribbing. That's all it looked like. And then you just gather it. And I had some yarn left over called Big Ribbon, which is super bulky. So yeah, it pays not to throw away little, you can make rugs out of it. You can make sweaters. I'd like to try it because it's soft. So I had some of that for this stem. The only concern is I may not stuffed it hard enough. I mean, it took an entire bag of, oh, there's Patches. You want to come up here? I doubt it. You'll squeal. And the project isn't finished until it gets its buttons on. So this is the little Sam Sedira Katie sweater. This is the tiniest size. And do you think that people really follow the whole buttonholes on the left or the right for guide? Do you think people really care about that anymore? This pattern has you make buttonholes on both sides while you're knitting, so that if you don't know if it's a boy or girl at the last minute, you can put your buttons on either side. But I really think that it's nice because you don't have to stress about if you're putting the button in exactly the right place. You know you are because you're putting it over the holes that are there. So I like that a lot. I think the buttons worked out good for it. And now truly it's finished. You just can't have things laying around without buttons on and think they're finished, right? So I've been reading a trilogy by Tracie Peterson, who apparently has written a lot of books. And it's about the gold rush in the Yukon and 3 women who inadvertently end up there, not because they're seeking gold. I like them a lot. The only problem is I lost book 2. So I read book 1 and now I'm on book 3, and I'm learning a lot of things that happened in book 2 that maybe I didn't really want to know yet. Oh well, right? There's a lot bigger problems in life than that. I was doing a dishcloth with Grandma's favorite dishcloth pattern out of Mary Maxim Scrub. It's a scrubby, scruffy kind of yarn. And I was knitting with Holly. She comes into the shop on Saturdays. Hi, Holly. And I said, oh my, I must not have followed the decrease part of this pattern because it was way off. So what I did is I did a lot of aggressive decreasing. And I said to Holly, I'm not ripping this out. I mean, this type of scruffy yarn sticks and it's very hard to rip out. And she said, well, why don't you put a little hanger on it, kind of like a combination dishcloth, dish towel. And there we go. And it looks all Christmassy. And so you took some lemon and made lemonade, right? Woohoo! What else is going on? We saw a really good movie the other night. My husband said, oh, let's just relax and watch a movie. It was called The Imitation Games. It was based on a true story of a man by the last name of Turing. And it was incredible because of his brilliant mind. This was in Across the Seas. They were able to crack the enemy's code to tell the Allied forces where to go to win the war. And it was a very stressful position. And all through his life, he was brilliant. And he was despised because of that, even as a child. It was very inspiring. The Imitation Games, we watched it for free. But it might have been Prime, I'm not sure. So the felted hat, my washing machine broke. We got a new washing machine. I'm interested to see how it's going to felt. I used 2 skeins of, look at this monster. I used 2 skeins of Lamb's Pride Bulky. And where I made my mistake was thinking the designer didn't know what she was doing. So when it had you decreasing right here, I thought it's too early to decrease, but they were decreasing for the turned up rim. So I have maybe 3 extra rows there and it might affect it. I got done with just a small piece of yarn, but isn't this thing huge? We'll see. We'll see how it felts down next episode. I also have a pumpkin I'm ready to felt, and I think a few other things. So I love felting. I love waiting to see. Now, if you have a front loader, it's not going to work because you have to keep stopping the wash machine and checking it. This is my granddaughter's birthday today. Happy birthday, Gabby. That's her with her sister, Lila. Now that's her this last summer. And now she's 11. So happy birthday, Gabby. She sent me a picture of a striped hamster gerbil with brown, white, and she called it cinnamon because she said it looks like a cinnamon roll. Really cute. And it's a baby, so it will get used to her holding it. When my kids were small, well, grade school, not small, we had a hamster. You know, this is terrible. I get hamsters and gerbils mixed up. I think it was a gerbil. And it would run on its wheel and everything. And somehow it got loose. And it was right before school was starting in the fall. So I had 3 boys in that bedroom, new clothes for school, and we could never see the gerbil running around, but every day there were more and more clothes with holes in them, and it was terrible. Couldn't find the gerbil, and our clothes are getting destroyed. This had a tag on it called the Gina hat. I didn't make it. It's a short row hat, and I somehow came upon owning it. There is a pattern out now called Onion hat that's very similar, but I just wanted to show it because it's just one of my favorite hats, and I put it on every time I walk the dog, and every like knitter or crocheter has their favorites, and it may not be the prettiest or the prettiest colors, but there's something about the way it fits and it's comfortable. And I'm petting my big dog here. Yeah, I wish you could come up here and see everybody. And there's a couple crocheted scarves I'm working on, and this one is Snowdrop Shawl, a free pattern. And when it's blocked, I think you'll be able to see these points. I have these little, I call them blocking combs, and they come in a couple sizes, and when you block it, you would put one down each side, but every so many rows you skip 5 stitches. Now this is Fuzzy Uneek, the fingering weight, lots of colors. Sometimes people come into the shop and they've split their ball, they've made 2 cowls or 2 sets of fingerless mitts, and they're completely different because it's like the first half of the ball has one set of colors and the second has another. So starting out here, I had the blues and the yellows. It's a merino yarn and it is soft. Then it got into golds, and then purples and pinks, and then browns. And in this area, it's a lot of earthy colors. They're not filming well. Some of those are dark browns, lighter browns, and I liked it. And then I got into burnt orange, and it's now bigger, and I got into some serious color pooling of oranges and purple. So people are right, it's completely different, but I do see blue and golds in there again, and I do see purples and pinks again. So, well, and that doesn't bother me. When I see a shawl on Ravelry or Pinterest or wherever, no matter how beautiful it looks, I want to see how it looks on. I saw one recently and it had solids and it had stripes, and I thought it was going to really be pretty. And when you saw it on, you didn't get the solids and the stripes. The pretty section was back here. So yeah, you want to see what it's going to look like on. So this is a boomerang type shape. I believe you can do a lot with them. You can wrap them all different ways. And I have quite a ways to go. You alternate a single crochet and a double, and then the next row on top of the double, you do a single, and vice versa. Some people call that the granite stitch, but it's especially pretty for variegated yarns. And no promises about when I'll get that done. This was another piece I wanted to show you that came to me. Someone else made it up for the book that featured it. It's a Cheryl Potter book. And such pretty cabling. I was telling someone today, oops, there went a crochet hook, that out of the colors that don't seem to sell well at the yarn shop, browns, and I'm not sure why. So I have a lot of brown yarn, and I'm going to make a little squirrel. And then fall colors like golds, oranges, burnt oranges, or it could just be this area. I don't know. And then crocheters, I had shown the triangular shawl out of Casablanca yarn. You know, I'm just thinking you could wear this different ways. And it is a pointy shawl because you do increases every row. I was thinking 4 of those together would be a neat blanket, wouldn't it? I think it would. But, you know, there's a couple ways to do it. You can either have a small, kind of like shawlette, or a nice roomy shawl that sometimes lays and almost looks like a sweater. This is a small little scarf I made years ago where I think I put a couple different yarns together. And again, I just like it. It's a simple little thing. I put a pin on it to match my dress, the feather pin, but yeah, I just like it. So I used 2 skeins, and excuse me 1 minute here. This is a skein. It is a wool yarn, but if I want it for warmth, it's not gonna, well, you could almost do a shrug. Look at that. You could attach that back there, I think, and it would be a shrug. But if you want it to lay and you want to, I still think it's too short. I mean, I could do a pin and put it like that, but yeah, I could. Maybe that's what I'll do. I was going to fringe it, but now looking at it, I think I like that look and I like the colors. So there we go. Voila, I solved that problem. I don't know why, but when I see the things on the podcast, it just looks different to me. So I kind of fixed that. We were talking about food today and how kids, especially smaller kids, will stick to very basic flours like vanilla ice cream. And they have all these choices. Now, if they can get sprinkles or they can get something that they know, they'll take it. And I think it's because if you don't have a reference, like if somebody said to you, why don't you come for dinner? We're going to have black goose porridge, goulash, whatever. and you're like, I think we have plans that night. So we're bringing the grandsons home from church on Sunday, and usually they like to come here. And Nolan, who is 8, said, Grandma, are we going to get fried chicken? And I said, no, we're having pork loin. And he said, I think we're supposed to go home after church because we haven't been spending enough time with our mom and dad. And I thought that was funny. And I knew it was because pork loin didn't sound right to him. He didn't know what that was, but we served it, and he loves rice. His brother doesn't, but I've tried before to flavor the rice, and you know how kids are, very finicky. But Mary Whitener, if you're watching, hi. Mary told me that if you cook rice in broth, chicken broth, it's really good, but I didn't have that. So I put 2 chicken bouillon cubes in the water, make sure I dissolved them, and made the rice in that. So when I sat it on the table, Nolan said, why is this rice yellow? It's not white. And at first I was going to just kind of be slippery and not really answer the question. And then I thought, no, because kids are smart. You can't. So I just told him. And he tasted it and he loved it. And then his little brother Tobin looked at the pork and it had spices on the outside. And he said, I don't like that. And we said, that's okay. Don't eat any. But I think they both had about 4 helpings. So they really liked it. And the rice was a big hit. Sometimes kids can be impossible to feed, and when they're smaller, 4, 5, 6, sometimes they only have a few things that they eat, and that's all they want. It could be hot dogs, macaroni and cheese. They don't want anything else. I finished the Noro Scarf. It was one of my all-time favorite projects. I think all the color changes, and even though people have the perception that Noro is rough, this is soft. Just while you're working with it, it softens up. A lot of people have made this. It's just 2 different colors, 2 balls of each, knit 2 rows with one, drop it, and knit 2 rows with the other. And I am surprised, though, with the thousands of people that have knitted this, that the dreaded stockinette stitch curl hasn't been addressed, because it is going to curl. And if you block it, it might stay flat for a while, but then it's going to curl again. So I love the colors, but if I made another one, I would put some kind of border on the ends. And you know, the color sequences didn't repeat. I just got all kinds of neat colors. And you could wrap it around as a cowl when you go out to walk your big lovable dogs. So 4 balls, and loved it. I really didn't want it to end. I said to the grandkids, can you imagine if we made a really big snake? I did like the edging on this project, which I have shown this several times, but I've now seamed it. Remember years ago when little girls had those muffs and they had the fur and you put your hands in there to keep warm? This came out of a Vogue magazine, and you did I think 13 inches of this cable type pattern, and then you went into brioche, and there I think I got off a row, but I really like the way it looked. It looks like an intentional band. And I like the inside too. I liked the inside of the cable pattern. And the brioche, that's okay too, but there's my seam. This is a yarn called Taki Kismet, and this is going to be super warm. You could either fold it down or just wear it all slouched up. And I'd like to make this again. I enjoyed it. Or just maybe do the whole thing with the cable pattern. I don't know, but I really did. I went into it having no conception what it was going to look like, because it was wrapped around the model's neck, and I didn't understand that it was off the sweater pattern. It's soft. It's an alpaca blend, so yeah, I like it a lot. It's nice to do satisfying projects. I had a new customer, Dana, if you're watching, and she called me and said, I was calling to see if you're open, but if you're answering, yes, of course you're open. And I just wanted to find out, do you have Juniper Moon yarn? Yes, I do. Do you have the worsted weight Juniper Moon? I start naming them. Do you have their alpaca yarn? Yes. Do you take American Express credit card? Yes. And she said, every time I answered, she'd go, yes, I'll be there in about an hour. And she came, she was delightful, and she said, an hour is nothing to drive to a yarn shop. When she and her husband were moving to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, there was a yarn shop called the Yarn Garden. And that made her very happy that she was going to have a local yarn store in LYS. And in the short time it took them to move, the yarn shop was closed. So that made her unhappy. I wanted to share a story out of my church's newsletter, and I was delighted that this lady is in my Sunday school class, Anita. Anita's grandson used to come to our school at the church, and he had some, I don't remember if it was Asperger's issues, and so this is called baby chicks. There is no human being on the planet who isn't vulnerable to the impact of the pandemic, so it is hard to stay positive and cheerful. Some would say there isn't much to laugh at. Not so. There's always something funny to lift our spirits and lift our lips into a smile and our throats to chuckle out loud. Our grandson works in a farm supply store. His store was allowed to stay open this spring when most were closed. Among other things, they sold baby chickens, ducks, and turkeys. One day, he put on his mask, plastic face shield, and started his workday. 2 young fellows approached him and asked to purchase 6 baby chicks. He took them to a newly received shipment of chirping yellow fuzzballs, which were in a container marked chicks. With the customers examining each one, he boxed them, took them to the cash register, and saw the customers out. A short time later, he walked by the container, stopped, and caught his breath. Someone had mismarked them. They were baby turkeys. What could he do? He reported it to his manager, who could only laugh with him as they wondered how long it would take until the new baby chick owners realized they had turkeys. To his knowledge, the birds have never been returned. In this time when our hearts are overwhelmed, I wonder if we need to think about what can make us laugh. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. Proverbs 17:22. My husband was looking at an old episode of, KYRP Cincinnati, and it was Thanksgiving, and they were gifting all these turkeys, and they were dropping them out of the airplanes, and they didn't realize they couldn't fly, and my husband was beside himself laughing. I also found this cute little pair of toddler pants at the shop. We're in the process of donating to Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. It's one of the poorest areas in the United States. People have homes that are not insulated, and so we're doing our best. But aren't they cute? So I thought I would slip them in and show them to you. A crochet pattern that I have been wanting to make for years and still haven't is it's like a little project bag that looks like an acorn. Isn't that so cute? But I've yet to do it, and we don't have a lot of time left in 2020. So occasionally I like to show some artwork, and let me just get this here. I've collected paintings over the years, and when I was on call as a physician, one of the doctors said you never get used to the intrusion of it, because let's say it's a Saturday and you haven't been called all day. It's now 4 p.m, and you get garden gloves on and you just start digging in the dirt, and boom, you got to go to the hospital. Or you've just gotten in the shower and soaped up your hair, boom, you gotta go. And so to make myself feel calm, and a lot of times it was the same people coming back and back and back because they didn't do what you told them the day before. They didn't go home and take the pill, or they weren't taking their antibiotic, and you could end up getting frustrated and feeling like the patient was an intrusion, and I didn't want to feel that. So I would go on eBay and buy a painting, and there was a guy that used to post on eBay all the time called David Colburn, and he had a big dog, and he would travel all around the country in his van, and he would paint when he was there. And this is called Eyes of Jade. Isn't that beautiful? So I've talked already about design, whether it's artwork or knitting or crocheting. So things cut in half tend to be boring. So this would be called a low horizontal, about a 1/3, 2/3. And then here again, you see it there. That's why I was surprised that this was, I think, 13 inches of this and 13 inches of that. I was surprised, because if this stood out on each side, I think it'd be more interesting, but oh well. But his work is absolutely beautiful, And I think he sells a lot of prints now. This was done in 2001. And then he didn't put a title on this, but isn't this gorgeous? This is in my bathroom, and people might joke, but hey, when you sit down, you look at this painting every day and you just appreciate and love it. The fur looks so smooth. You think that, you could touch it. I love it. I think artwork is a investment in happiness and sincerity, and you look at it every day and it brings you joy and happiness. So the last thing was I attempted to do Susan B. Anderson's operator socks. You don't print it out because it's 19 or 20 pages, lots of photographs, and it is a pay pattern, so I can't give away much, but it's an afterthought heel. So after you put your waste yarn in and do your rows, she tells you, so you're working on one needle, and she tells you to do 3 more inches and then rip out the waste yarn. What she didn't say was, now you're going to change and work in the round. So when I took out my waste yarn, this is what I had. So disappointing. I'm gonna have to rip it out and go back, and oh well, it could be worse. My friend Margaret Ann, hi Margaret Ann, if you're watching, was working on thrummed mittens and found out she needs to rip out. It's discouraging. Some people put it away. I had one student one time that had all this done and just took the scissors and snip, snip, snip and threw it in the can. She just was done. I have this book among my stash. I'm not sure why naked. It's No Sheep for You, A World Beyond Wool, but I don't really understand why she had to be naked. It really does have some decent patterns in it. So it says, knit happy with cotton, silk, linen, hemp, bamboo, and other delights by Amy Singer. And they tell you about different plant fibers, where they come from, and kind of how they're made. And the patterns in here are nice. So they also show you the character of these, if they're, so let's just take how they stretch, how they shrink. And I am surprised at the amount of people that are suspicious about cotton. It's going to stretch out, it's going to shrink, it won't hold its shape. And they also tell you how different non-wool yarns do with stitch definition, durability, care, felting, softness. So it's pretty nice. And then the projects are nice. And I like that sweater. But what I wanted to share today, let's see here. And they do have a pair of thrummed mittens in there where you take, so now don't you use wool roving? Since this is a no wool book. Oh, silk roving. Aha. Okay, so there was a page in here. If you have a yarn winder and you get a slippery yarn that it just keeps pulling out and you can't do anything with it, they have a solution for that in here. And they also have the myth of the center pull ball. Now, recently Knitting Fever has been putting in their instructions sometimes not to pull from the middle, to pull from the outside. Wool yarns that tend to stick to other strands, when the middle starts to get cleared out and it collapses, will start to get stuck. But I found this interesting. It said, it's so tantalizing, isn't it? A tiny tidy cake of yarn with a single neat strand waving at you from the enticing middle. It seems to say, pull me. And we've named the things the center pull ball. So shouldn't we be pulling from the center? No. With a few exceptions, a non-wool center pull ball, don't do it. What makes a center pull ball work is the natural attraction of each strand of yarn to any strand it touches. The fibers want to stick together, so even as the hole in the center gets bigger and bigger, the outer core keeps its shape until the very end. So what I said was the direct opposite, sorry. This makes for a very enjoyable center pull ball experience. This works brilliantly with wool and animal fibers and even some crunchy silk. I don't know that I've ever had crunchy silk, but for most non-wools, this rarely happens. The first few inches, even yards, will pull out of the center, luring you into making you think, aha, I can do this, but trust me, there's just not enough tooth on the outer part of the ball to hold it together. And what you will soon run into, especially with slippery rayon or shimmery silk, is a collapsed mess with not only tangles, but maddening knots. So, pull non-wool yarns from outside. And I had that wrong. I thought it was collapsing on the inside, but no, they're talking about the outside. So that's pretty good. So anyway, I hope you're all keeping your peace of mind. Thanksgiving is coming, a time to be thankful and thank our God for all that he's done for us and his watch care. If any of you are depressed, please look upward. God loves you so much. And keep your chin up. I'm memorizing different Psalms, and Psalm 3, I think, David was being pursued by probably thousands of enemies, and he said, there's so many people that say there's no hope for him and God, but he says, but you, Lord, you heard me, you heard my cries, and you are my shield, my glory, and the lifter of my head. So keep the faith, shine baby shine, and I'll see you in about 2 weeks. Bye-bye.